All right, so let's go into the last segment, which is your rant, which I don't know what it is, but let's go with it.
My rant's gonna be short and quick, man. Short and sweet. I There's a conversation that we have in sports now that I think is really silly that we can just agree to not discuss anymore. And they talk about how guys will be remembered, how your legacy will be. All right. What you contribute is what you contribute. So if you win championships, cool. If you don't, cool. If you stay with one team for a long time and that's what you want to do, if it's not, cool. But people talk about, well, if they join this team, they'll never be thought of as such and such. Or if they play for another 5 years, that's the guy people will remember. That's not why you compete. You know what I'm saying?
Hmm.
Like, first and foremost, these guys join these professional leagues to secure their future. And most of them have done that. So that is what it is. But then after that, a lot of them compete. We oversimplify it and we say to win. But if you compete really hard, what you realize is you compete to discover yourself. Competition exposes you to parts of your personality under a level of stress that real life doesn't offer in that particular way without causing great risk, right? So a Navy SEAL might have that level of stress, but he might also die.
Mm.
Where on the basketball court, you have wartime battle level stress and resistance without the consequences. So you get to reveal your character. So when they talk about these guys, if he leaves this team, no one's ever left a team that did this, or if he joins this team, he's being perceived as chasing a ring. What that does, and I bring this issue up because this is when I think sports discussion oversteps its bounds to a degree because you're not really talking about the sport and what's happening. You're talking about what other people think about you. And to prioritize what other people think about you as opposed to what's best for your mindset, your family's mindset, your teammates, perhaps, I think is always the wrong way to go because people are fickle and the cult of personality is not as important as you think it is. There are many people who are quote unquote not remembered a certain way who are totally fine with the life and effort that they put into it. And I think the legacy discussion has gone far, far, far over the top. And more, we're seeing athletes tell us outright to the media's faces, I don't care about that. That's nonsense. That's for you guys. And what I'm seeing is it's starting to break down how seriously some of these interviews are being taken because they're saying stupid stuff right off the bat that doesn't matter to these guys.
You know, um, I think that's interesting because I agree with you from a personal standpoint, right? As a human being and as a person who, if I'm putting myself in a athlete's shoes, right? And if I'm talking to my son who's an athlete or my daughter who's an athlete, I'm telling them don't allow anybody to define what makes you great or what makes you successful. Don't let anybody tell you that you need to be remembered this way or that way in order for you to feel fulfilled with your career. That's what I would say, right? But on the flip side, I wonder, as a fan, is that what's best for sports? Because part of what fuels sports are these legacy conversations. And are these conversations about all time greatness? And are these standards and benchmarks that we have set up for people that define greatness, right? So if the athlete doesn't buy into any of that, does it become less fun to discuss? You know what I mean? And does it ultimately hurt the the conversation and hurt the overall presence of the sport itself? And I draw a correlation to combat sports because in boxing, right, there's a lot of people right now, boxers, who will tell you, um, Titles don't matter. Championships don't matter anymore. This is about prize fighting. We fight for the biggest paychecks. We fight for the paydays. That's what we fight for, right? But boxing was so much more enjoyable when that is what the fighters cared about.
Well, you're talking about competitive integrity, though.
Well, no. I mean, it's not even that they don't want to win. They want to win.
What I mean by competitive integrity is it's very simple rules. In order to be the best, you have to beat the best. And we've both discussed how fighters will pick and choose their fights and try to be quote unquote smart about who they fight, which is anti-competitive. So when you're being less competitive, the punishment is you're less talked about, less favorably, and you're less interesting.
But isn't that the same thing? Because
that's what you actually do.
But what I'm saying is this, like, okay, so shouldn't I say this? This is what I should say. Doesn't that give the same perception to the fan? Because if I'm Carmelo Anthony and I tell you, I don't really care about winning the championship. That's not what defines me. That's not what's important to me. If I do, I do. If I don't, I don't. So a lot of fans didn't like that when he said and made that comment. They didn't like that. They didn't like that perception. They didn't like that because they took it as being non-competitive. That here is the ultimate goal in your sport, but you're saying that if you don't attain it, then it doesn't matter to you. You know, this is why people love Kobe Bryant, because they know for a fact that Kobe would be an unhappy human being had he not won championships, because that was what was important to him. And that agenda aligned with the thinking of sports fans.
But here's the bottom line. Carmelo Anthony was true to himself, and he would be miserable trying to be Kobe Bryant.
I understand that.
And we just have to accept that. And we can discuss that. We can discuss it till the cows come home.
Because I mean, I get that. And like I said, if I'm Carmelo's dad, or if I'm Carmelo's brother, you know, or whatever, I'm telling him, yeah, bro, yes, exactly right. You know, don't let nobody tell you what's supposed to make you happy. You do what you, because I care about Carmelo, you know, and I want him to be happy. But the fact of the matter is, fans don't really care about these players.
And here's the thing, though, when it comes to the competitive aspect, that bears itself out because the most competitive players tend to get rewarded, as you discussed, right? Even I know you tend to hate on them quite a bit, but everybody understands that what Russell Westbrook is really competitive, which is why for a guy who hasn't won a championship, he's still one of the most talked about players in the league. He plays in Oklahoma City.
Yeah.
Right. Which is,
you know, my opinion of Russell Westbrook has changed dramatically. As a matter of fact, though, like I did used to take, I mean, I've always known he was a fantastic player, right? So I mean, you're just like stupid if you don't acknowledge that, right? The same thing with Jimmy Butler. Jimmy Butler's a heck of a player. You know what I mean? You're crazy if you sit up and try to act like Jimmy Butler's not a good player just because you don't like something that he did. I mean, you're high. But for Russell, my opinion of him has actually changed quite a bit. But I think Russell possesses that dog in him that people like. Russell truly looks like, if I don't win, I'm not gonna be happy, at least for right now. Now I'm not gonna go home and be mean to my wife and kids about it, but I'm not happy because this is what I want. But when you make a statement and you say that, I mean, and I put it like this, I don't fault Melo, right? I'm not even thinking as Brian here. I'm thinking as sports fans and how dude, some of the things that I hear, and I'm sure you hear, sports fans say about players for their teams and that sort of thing. Some of this stuff is insane. Like, dude, you do realize you're talking about a human being, right? Like that's a person. Like you talk about him like he's literally a character on 2K that you just flop around left and right. So I totally get that, right? And I understand how, as a means of self-preservation, sometimes you just have to be like, dude, I'm not buying into that. Y'all saying that in order for me to be okay with y'all, I gotta stay in Oklahoma City and suffer through whatever I'm suffering through, rather than sign with Golden State. Y'all are saying that I shouldn't leave Cleveland to go to Miami to play with Dwayne Wade and Chris Bosh and win 2 championships and go to 4 straight finals. Y'all are saying that, but I got to do what's right for me. And I totally get that, right? But what I'm saying is, if we go so far to the point where legacy doesn't matter, and fans 100% buy into that whole concept, like you said, we need to put that whole thing to rest.
Well, let me clarify. I'm not saying that legacy doesn't matter. I'm saying fans don't get to decide 100% what legacy is. You know what I'm saying? Like, there's a certain point where a player has done what they've done or hasn't done what they haven't done, and that is their legacy. And people don't want to admit that, and they want their opinion to rewrite history one way or the other. You know what I'm saying? And it just doesn't work that way. Like, we have this discussion when you talk about the greatest of all time, and you look at Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, and it's like, you look at it on paper, his accomplishments are ridiculous.
They're ridiculous.
And quite frankly, if Kareem Abdul-Jabbar acted like Shaquille O'Neal, he probably would be thought of as equal to or better than Michael Jordan. You know what I'm saying?
I think the only reason he wouldn't is because he's bigger, and people just don't like it. It's funny, and especially in the United States, right? Because bigger, faster, stronger is always what we prefer.
Yeah.
But don't be too big. Don't be too fast.
There's a limit, right? There's a limit to how big.
Don't be too big. Because if you're too big, then now everything you do gets looked at like, well, he's big as I don't know what, you know.
Right.
So, you know, but I do think definitely if he had a bigger personality,
correct,
that he would have more, he would get more love, because Kareem Abdul-Jabbar is no less than the second greatest player to ever live. Now, I don't know necessarily where you would have whoever, but he's no less than the second greatest player to ever live.
You look at the totality of his life playing basketball, and it's
it's just, I mean, I really, if you've just heard Kareem Abdul-Jabbar's name and you just know, oh yeah, Skyhook goggles, whatever, I urge you to just go to Basketball Reference. And this doesn't even tell you the whole span of his greatness, but just to get an idea, go and search Kareem Abdul-Jabbar's statistics on Basketball Reference. Basketball Reference puts in bold when you have led the league in something. There's so much bold on Kareem Abdul-Jabbar's stat sheet that it is startling. Like, I mean, if the bold was to red text in the New Testament, you think his entire stat sheet is Jesus talking. So I'm telling you, it's a lot. It's a lot.
It's not an exaggeration to say that he dominated the sport of basketball for 25 years.
Yes. I mean, like,
it's that silly.
Like, I mean, like if you're talking about from college and
high school,
high school, Power Memorial. I mean, you literally go from winning back-to-back high school championships to winning 4 straight championships at UCLA. I mean,
I don't know exactly what the number is, but he lost single-digit games until he got to the NBA. Like, it's something stupid. Like, he lost 3 games between the age of 15 and like 22. I don't know what the number is.
Like, I mean, it's crazy. It's crazy. And he just doesn't get but legacy is a funny question.
And here's my thing though. When the fans form these cult of personality debates, they miss out. You know what I'm saying? Like, so many people hated so hard on LeBron James for so long that they miss out on how great he is. I had to wake myself up one day and go, you know what? He should be being compared to Shareef Abdul-Rahim. Like, legitimately. Shareef Abdul-Rahim is a top draft pick NBA player who plays his position. And you should be looking at both of them. And when you see how much better LeBron James is, like,
and Shareef was a good player.
And that's why I bring him up, because he wasn't above. You know what I'm saying? And so, you know, and you look at LeBron James, and it's just like, whoa. When you look at LeBron James, and the only 2 people you look at besides him are Michael Jordan and Kobe Bryant, that's ridiculous. And that's, you know what I'm saying? And it's like, you're not really observing the sport. And I think at that point, fans have to have a certain accountability for having a level of observational skill.
Mhm.
to have the discussion that they're having.
Right.
You know?
Yeah. Definitely. Definitely. I mean, I definitely agree. Perhaps the conversation needs to shift, right? And needs to have more layers than it has the legacy conversation. But I do think that it's very important to protect the right to continue to discuss greatness. But I do
Oh
think
yeah,
that there's,
the
I
right.
do think that
I'm just
it
saying,
needs
call
to,
them out when it's
yeah,
dumb.
it needs to be expanded for
Yeah,
sure.
because the
You know,
players are starting to call people out when they're being dumb,
yeah.
and I'm saying we can do that as you know, talking heads, as fans. You know, analysts can do it. We can call out the dumb stuff because there's some people that are video analysts that are going on screen and just hating on people. And I'm not saying this to dump on them because they have a job and their job is to get views and clicks.
Hmm.
But when we allow that to influence us personally as fans, we don't need to do that.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. Yeah. Pushing, we allow someone else's agenda to be pushed on us for sure. Yeah. Well, that's what we got for you guys today. I enjoyed this conversation. Maybe one day we'll let y'all in on what we was talking about before the show, because that was pretty entertaining. So, but uh as usual, we will be here every Thursday with Add Me Bro. And as you guys have noticed throughout the week, we dropped each one of these segments individually. If you want to be a part of the show in terms of maybe having some suggestions on some of the things you want us to talk about, I urge you, at the bottom of the screen right now, you'll see at Me Bro Show, our Twitter account. I mentioned it before. I should have been mentioning it more prevalently throughout these shows, but shoot us a question on that Twitter account, and we'll get that question. If it's something that we can work in as a topic or as a jump off for conversation, we will definitely use that. And so yeah, it's cool. But I also encourage everybody, make sure you leave a like on this video. If you have not subscribed, do that as well. You've probably seen some other little symbols throughout the video asking you to like and subscribe. Obey those too. So
Unless you're Jimmy Butler and you got a problem with authority.
you know, you might have a problem with authority. You'd be Jimmy Butler and you'd be one of my least favorite players. But it is what it is. It's okay. But for books, I am Brian, UniqueMazique. I appreciate everybody watching. God bless and peace.
How could I be weak? I'm rather unique.